The wedding of the year glittered beneath the chandeliers of Beverly Hills Grand Hotel. Champagne flutes sparkled in manicured hands, violins filled the marble hall with gentle music, and waiters in white gloves glided across the room carrying trays of caviar and golden macarons. At the center of it all stood Ryan Mitchell, tall, handsome, smug, and dressed in a custom tuxedo. Tonight, he wasn't just marrying his new bride Vanessa Brooks, a glamorous young model. He was determined to humiliate the one woman he despised the most, Emily Carter, his ex-wife. Only a year ago, she had been the quiet wife by his side, carrying his child and praying for a happy family. But when life turned harsh and she could no longer hide her struggles, Ryan discarded her like trash. He filed for divorce, took their house, emptied the accounts, and left her alone and pregnant with triplets. The whispers around town said she was ruined, powerless, and forgotten. That was exactly how Ryan wanted it. So when he mailed her an invitation to his grand wedding, it wasn't out of kindness. It was bait. He wanted her to walk into the ballroom looking poor and broken so every guest could laugh. He wanted the world to see the difference between his glittering success and her supposed misery. "Let her come crawling," he bragged to his friends. "Let them see how far she's fallen. It will make me look even greater." But Ryan had underestimated Emily's spirit. The same woman he once mocked as weak had endured sleepless nights with 3 newborns, survived cruel gossip, and swallowed every tear until her heart turned into steel. She didn't plan to crawl into his wedding. If she went, she would walk tall. She would not arrive alone. The night grew tense as rumors spread through the ballroom. Some whispered that Emily would never dare to show up. Others chuckled, imagining her slipping through the back door with borrowed clothes. Vanessa smirked, certain that her presence would crush Emily completely. Ryan raised his glass, already savoring the triumph of the humiliation he had prepared. Then the hotel doors swung open. Gasps spread like fire through the room. A stretch limousine had just pulled up outside, and out stepped Emily Carter. No longer the tired, abandoned woman people remembered. She wore an elegant gown that shimmered beneath the chandeliers, her hair swept back like a queen, her steps graceful and unshaken. At her side walked Alexander Harrington, one of the city's most mysterious billionaires, his presence commanding, his hand resting protectively on Emily's back. And behind them, 3 little children in matching tuxedos and dresses followed, wide-eyed and innocent. Triplets. Ryan's children. The music faltered, champagne glasses froze midair. Whispers turned into stunned silence, and Ryan's smug smile disappeared for the very first time. Before the dazzling entrance that shook the Beverly Hills wedding, Emily Carter's life had been carved out of shadows and sacrifice. She was not born into privilege. She grew up in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Phoenix, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. From an early age, Emily learned to value simple things: warm meals, secondhand clothes, and the kind of love that was measured not in diamonds but in sacrifices. At 22, Emily believed she had found her fairy tale when she met Ryan Mitchell. He was older, confident, a rising businessman with smooth words and an easy smile. To Emily, he seemed like a savior. He promised her the life she never had. A home of comfort, a family built on stability, and dreams bigger than her world had ever allowed. Against her mother's quiet warnings, Emily gave him her heart, and soon after, her vows. The early days of their marriage seemed beautiful. Ryan spoiled her with flowers, whispered promises of forever, and swore he adored her innocence. Emily, believing in love with all her soul, became the perfect wife. She gave up her small job as a receptionist to support Ryan's career, managing their home and caring for every detail of his life. She thought love meant sacrifice. She thought her loyalty would be enough. But as Ryan's wealth and ambition grew, his warmth faded. He no longer looked at Emily as his partner, but as dead weight. When Emily became pregnant, news that filled her with joy and trembling hope, Ryan's true nature revealed itself. Instead of celebrating, he scoffed at her. "You can't even provide for yourself," he sneered. "How will you provide for 3? Because fate had written its own cruel twist, Emily was carrying triplets. What should have been a miracle became her greatest burden. The medical bills, the exhaustion, the fear. Emily faced it all alone. Ryan stopped coming home, stopped answering calls, and eventually pushed her out of their house with nothing but a suitcase and a breaking heart. While he flaunted his success in glittering suits and expensive cars, Emily slept on a friend's couch, clutching her swelling belly, whispering promises to the children inside her. "I will protect you, no matter what." The nights were long. Tears became her only lullaby. She worked part-time jobs while heavily pregnant, scrubbing offices and folding clothes in laundromats to save every dollar for diapers. Strangers stared, some pitied, some mocked. Her body ached, her spirit cracked, but she never surrendered. Every kick in her womb reminded her that her fight wasn't just for herself. It was for 3 little souls who needed her strength. When the babies were born, 2 boys and 1 girl, Emily's world shifted again. The exhaustion doubled, but so did her courage. She rocked them to sleep while hiding her tears, humming lullabies her mother once sang. She fed them with trembling hands, sometimes skipping meals herself so they would have enough. Poverty pressed hard, but love made her unbreakable. The world may have called her a poor, discarded ex-wife. Ryan may have laughed at her misery, but Emily Carter carried something far stronger than money or status: resilience. It was that resilience, sharpened by pain and polished by sacrifice, that would one day make her entrance into Ryan's wedding not a moment of humiliation, but of triumph. Because the girl he abandoned had become a woman he could never destroy. The Beverly Hills Grand Hotel was a palace disguised as a hotel. Its ballroom stretched wider than a football field, lined with marble pillars and chandeliers dripping with 1,000 crystals. Tonight, every inch of it was designed not just for celebration, but for spectacle. Ryan Mitchell wanted his wedding to Vanessa Brooks to scream wealth, power, and triumph. He wanted every guest to know that he had risen to the top, leaving his pitiful past and his poor ex-wife far behind. Gold-trimmed invitations had been sent weeks earlier to the city's elite: investors, politicians, celebrities, and business magnates. The event had been featured in lifestyle magazines, hyped as the union of the season. Reporters clustered outside, their cameras ready to capture each luxurious detail. Limousines lined the driveway, delivering guests dressed in couture gowns and tuxedos that cost more than a year's rent for ordinary families. Inside, the air buzzed with shallow laughter and champagne toasts. Waiters in white gloves circled with trays of oysters and lobster tails, while a string quartet filled the air with Mozart. At the head of the hall stood Ryan, flashing the smug smile of a man who believed he had won at life. His arm draped proudly around Vanessa, a vision in her designer gown, sparkling diamonds and smug confidence. Vanessa, 26, basked in the attention. Once a minor model struggling for recognition, she now stood beside a wealthy groom in a wedding worth millions. She leaned into Ryan, whispering sweet nothings and smirking as if the ballroom was her personal stage. The cameras loved her, and she loved every flash. She didn't care that whispers about Ryan's ex-wife lingered in the corners. In fact, she hoped Emily would come. Vanessa longed to see her rival crumble in public. Ryan's groomsmen clapped him on the back, congratulating him on his upgrade. Guests raised their glasses, not just to celebrate love, but to cement alliances, to secure future deals. In this glittering hall, everything had a price: love, loyalty, even dignity. And Ryan reveled in it. He raised his champagne flute high and declared, "Tonight, I leave the past behind me. Only success lies ahead." But the truth was, Ryan hadn't invited Emily just to flaunt his new life. He wanted a show. He wanted to prove that while he soared, she had sunk. He wanted her presence to serve as a living reminder of his superiority. Some guests, aware of the bitter divorce, snickered at the thought of Emily arriving in a second-hand dress, perhaps looking frail, tired, and broken. "She'll probably come begging," Ryan joked earlier that evening, and we'll all laugh. The orchestra swelled as the ceremony prepared to begin. The officiant stood ready, the flower arrangements perfumed the air, and the ballroom brimmed with anticipation. Yet beneath the glamour, a quiet tension simmered. Everyone wondered, would Emily come? By the grand entrance doors, a hush suddenly rippled through the crowd. A valet rushed inside, whispering something to the maitre d'. The music faltered. Heads turned toward the golden doors, waiting, wondering. Ryan smirked, convinced that his trap was about to spring. Vanessa's smile widened, hungry for the spectacle. Guests leaned forward, curious and eager for drama. None of them knew that the woman about to step through those doors would not be the broken, pitiful ex-wife they expected. She would be the storm that shattered their perfect illusion. Ryan Mitchell had perfected the art of deception. To the guests in the Beverly Hills ballroom, he looked like the ideal groom. Charming, successful, a man who had climbed the ladder of wealth and claimed the ultimate prize, a glamorous young wife. But beneath the tuxedo and rehearsed smile hid a man whose ambition had always been fueled by cruelty. Ryan's journey to success wasn't paved with hard work alone. It was carved from betrayal, shortcuts, and broken promises. When he married Emily years ago, he had little more than a modest salary and big dreams. Emily's quiet devotion, her willingness to sacrifice, gave him stability. But as soon as his career started to take off, Ryan began to see her as baggage. He complained about her plain looks, mocked her for not keeping up with his wealthy colleagues' wives, and belittled her every effort to hold the family together. When Emily revealed she was carrying triplets, Ryan's mask slipped entirely. Instead of joy, his eyes filled with calculation. 3 children meant more expenses, more responsibility, less freedom to chase wealth and pleasure. "You've ruined my life," he spat one night, slamming the door as she cried on the floor. From then on, his visits home grew fewer, his excuses grew wilder, until he finally threw her out. To him, Emily was just a chapter he wanted erased. Enter Vanessa Brooks, the glittering replacement. Vanessa was everything Emily was not, at least in Ryan's eyes. She was young, glamorous, and came from a wealthy circle. To the public, she was a rising model, often photographed at fashion events with champagne in hand. But behind the makeup and designer gowns was a woman as calculating as Ryan himself. She saw in him not love, but opportunity. With Ryan, she could secure the lifestyle she craved. The diamonds, the yachts, the mansion parties. It was Vanessa who encouraged Ryan to flaunt his new life, who sneered at the very mention of Emily. "Invite her," she whispered when the wedding plans began. "Let her see what she lost. Let everyone see what you gained." Her cruelty wasn't just about proving herself superior, it was about crushing any threat to her new position as Mrs. Mitchell. Together, Ryan and Vanessa were a perfect storm of arrogance and greed. They fed off each other's vanity, blind to the whispers around them. Some guests admired their boldness, others shook their heads, sensing disaster. But neither Ryan nor Vanessa cared. They believed they were untouchable, above judgment, destined for a life of endless indulgence. As Ryan paraded Vanessa around the ballroom, his laughter rang hollow, but his pride swelled with every envious glance. He relished the thought of Emily walking in, pale and frail, confirming to the world that he had upgraded. Vanessa clung to his arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light, her eyes gleaming with cruel anticipation. They thought they had scripted the perfect play. Emily as the tragic figure, Ryan as the triumphant groom, Vanessa as the dazzling prize. But the story they tried to write was about to collapse, because the woman they had dismissed as weak had transformed. And the empire they flaunted was built on sand, waiting for the tide to wash it all away. And tonight, that tide was coming. The plan to humiliate Emily wasn't just born out of Ryan's arrogance. It was carefully crafted, whispered in late-night conversations between him and Vanessa. While florists arranged roses and planners rehearsed the timing of the ceremony, Ryan and Vanessa plotted cruelty behind closed doors. "Are you sure she'll come?" Vanessa asked one evening as they lounged in their penthouse suite. She sipped champagne, her diamond ring glinting in the city lights. "She'll come," Ryan replied confidently. "Emily's too proud to ignore the invitation, and even if she doesn't want to, curiosity will eat her alive. She'll want to see me, see what she lost." Vanessa smirked. "Good, because when she walks through those doors, she'll realize she doesn't belong here. And everyone else will realize it too." They rehearsed the moment in their heads. Ryan imagined Emily slipping in, dressed in something outdated, maybe clutching a handbag she bought from a discount store. He pictured her standing awkwardly at the edge of the ballroom, while photographers snapped pictures of him with Vanessa in her glittering gown. It would be perfect. An unspoken comparison that painted Emily as pathetic and Vanessa as victorious. But Vanessa wanted more than just comparison. She wanted destruction. "Let's make sure the press notices her," she suggested. I'll tell the photographers where to look. We'll smile for the cameras with her standing right there, invisible beside us. She'll look like a ghost from your past, haunting your success. Ryan loved the idea. And after the vows, I'll make a toast, he added. Something subtle, something that thanks everyone who supported me when others couldn't. Everyone will know I'm talking about her. They'll laugh behind their glasses of champagne, and she'll crumble. Their cruelty deepened with every word. Vanessa giggled, imagining Emily's tears. Ryan grinned, savoring the thought of his ex-wife shrinking under the weight of his staged triumph. For them, the wedding wasn't about love. It was about power, about proving that they had won and Emily had lost. Even the seating arrangements reflected their malice. Ryan instructed the planner to keep a chair empty near the back, just in case the ex-wife shows up. He told the caterer to make note of it too. Vanessa, with a wicked sparkle in her eye, ensured that the table closest to that chair was filled with gossip-hungry socialites who would waste no time spreading whispers. By the morning of the wedding, the plan was set. Ryan stood before the mirror, adjusting his cufflinks, smiling at his reflection. Tonight, he told himself, I erase her completely. Vanessa, slipping into her gown, whispered, and tonight I become the only Mrs. Mitchell anyone will ever remember. Neither of them imagined that their stage, polished with gold and champagne, was about to collapse under the weight of truth. Because Emily was not walking into their trap as the broken woman they expected. She was walking in with a strength they had never seen, and with allies powerful enough to turn their cruel plan into their ultimate downfall. The trap they set for Emily was about to snap shut. But not on her. On them. The night before Ryan's wedding, Emily sat on the edge of a worn sofa in her tiny apartment, her head in her hands. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, its flickering bulb casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Around her, toys were scattered across the floor, baby bottles sat half empty on the counter, and the faint cries of her triplets drifted from the bedroom. She rocked slowly, exhaustion heavy in her bones. Life had not been kind since Ryan had thrown her out. She had scraped by, piecing together part-time jobs just to keep food on the table. She scrubbed offices at night, folded clothes at a laundromat during the day, and babysat for neighbors whenever she could. Her hands were cracked from cleaning chemicals, her back ached from long shifts, and her eyes burned from nights without sleep. The world seemed eager to remind her of her failure. Former friends avoided her calls, whispering that she had married above her station and gotten what she deserved. Strangers glanced at her belly and later at her stroller with judgment in their eyes. 3 children, no husband, no money. Even at the grocery store, she felt the sting of pity when she used food stamps to buy formula. That night, as she tucked her children into bed, she couldn't stop the tears from streaming down her cheeks. I promise my babies, she whispered, brushing soft hair from their foreheads. I won't let you grow up thinking you're not wanted. Even if I have to break, I will never let you feel abandoned. But inside, she was breaking. The invitation to Ryan's wedding sat on the kitchen table, its gold trim gleaming mockingly in the dim light. She had almost thrown it away the day it arrived. Yet here it was, a cruel reminder that while she struggled to survive, Ryan lived in luxury, celebrating with chandeliers and champagne. She knew the invitation wasn't about courtesy, it was about cruelty. He wanted her there. Wanted her humiliated. She pressed the card to her chest and sobbed, torn between fury and despair. A part of her wanted to burn it, to refuse him the satisfaction. But another part, deeper and stronger, whispered that she couldn't run forever. She had spent too long hiding, too long shrinking from the world's judgment. Maybe it was time to face it, no matter how painful. Still, fear gripped her. She imagined walking into that ballroom in her plain dress, clutching her children, every pair of eyes judging, every laugh piercing her like knives. She imagined Ryan smirking, Vanessa's cruel smile, the guests whispering, "There's the poor ex-wife. Look how far she's fallen." Her heart ached with shame. She wasn't sure she could endure it. That night, as the rain tapped against her window, Emily curled up on the sofa and let the weight of her life crush her. She cried until her throat burned, until the exhaustion dragged her into restless sleep. In her dreams, she saw Ryan's face, sneering, telling her she was nothing. She saw Vanessa laughing, dripping in jewels. And she saw herself, alone, broken, invisible. Emily didn't know it yet. But the storm she felt inside was the very fire that would soon carry her into the ballroom, not as a victim, but as a force neither Ryan nor Vanessa could ever silence. Because rock bottom wasn't her ending. It was the beginning of her rise. Morning light filtered weakly through the thin curtains of Emily's apartment, highlighting the exhaustion etched into her face. She had barely slept, her mind looping between fear of humiliation and the quiet rage burning in her chest. Her triplets stirred in their crib, tiny hands reaching out, reminding her of the only reason she kept going. She bent to kiss each of them, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. A knock at the door startled her. She hesitated, pulling her worn sweater tighter. Visitors were rare. When she opened the door, she froze. Standing in the hallway was Alexander Harrington. Emily knew of him. Everyone in the city did. He was the elusive billionaire investor who rarely appeared in public outside of charity events. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that carried the weight of too many storms, Alexander was a figure both admired and feared. She had seen his name in newspapers tied to powerful deals and hospital donations, but she never expected him to stand at her door. "Emily Carter?" His voice was calm, steady. "I hope I'm not intruding." Confused, she nodded. "Yes, that's me. But why are you here?" He glanced past her into the modest apartment, at the toys, the crib, the evidence of her struggle. For a moment his jaw tightened, then he met her eyes. "Because I know what he did to you, and because I've seen this story before." Emily stiffened, suspicion rising. "If Ryan sent you—" "Ryan didn't send me," Alexander interrupted firmly. "I'm here because I watched my own mother go through what you're living now. My father left her for another woman when she was sick. She died of cancer, alone. Years later, my wife—" His voice faltered just for a second before he forced himself to continue. "My wife fought cancer too. I did everything I could, but I still lost her. I know what it's like to watch someone you love suffer because of cruelty and betrayal, and I swore I would never stand by if I saw it happen again." Emily's breath caught. The hardness in his voice wasn't pity. It was pain, carved deep from his own scars. "I don't want your charity," she whispered, ashamed of the tremble in her tone. Alexander shook his head. "This isn't charity. This is justice. Ryan thinks he can parade his cruelty without consequence. He's wrong. You don't have to fight him alone." She stared at him, her heart torn between disbelief and a fragile hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Why would a man like him, with all his wealth and power, care about her? But when she looked into his eyes, she saw no judgment, no mockery, only recognition. As if her pain mirrored his own. "I can't walk into that wedding," Emily said, voice breaking. "Not like this. Not when he wants me to fall apart." "Then don't walk in as his victim," Alexander replied softly. "Walk in as the woman he underestimated. I'll make sure of it." The promise in his voice was ironclad. For the first time in years, Emily felt the faintest spark of strength return to her chest. What she didn't yet realize was that this man, broken by his own losses, rebuilt by compassion, was about to turn Ryan's cruel stage into the battlefield of his downfall. And Alexander Harrington never entered a battle he couldn't win. The days leading up to Ryan's wedding blurred together for Emily. Between caring for her triplets and battling the doubts clawing at her chest, she wondered if she had made a mistake even considering Alexander's offer. Every time she looked at the invitation on her table, she felt the weight of Ryan's cruelty pressing down. He wanted her humiliated. He wanted her broken. But Alexander Harrington wasn't a man who made empty promises. On the morning of the wedding, a sleek black limousine waited outside her apartment. Emily stared through the window in disbelief, clutching her children close. The neighbors peeked from their doors, whispering in shock. For the first time in years, she wasn't leaving the house with a stroller and worry lines. She was stepping into something extraordinary. "Emily," Alexander said, offering his hand as she approached, "today isn't about him. It's about you reclaiming your dignity. Let me help you show the world who you really are." Inside the limousine, the leather seats gleamed, soft music filled the air, and a stylist waited with racks of gowns. Emily gasped, "This is too much, I can't." Alexander shook his head. "You've given up enough. Let me give something back." The stylist guided her through the dresses, each more stunning than the last. At first, Emily hesitated, her fingers trembling as she touched the silks and satins. But when she slipped into a deep sapphire gown, the room seemed to shift. The fabric hugged her frame, the color illuminated her eyes, and for the first time in years she didn't see a tired mother in the mirror. She saw a woman reborn. Her children, dressed in tiny tuxedos and matching dresses, clapped their hands with innocent delight. "Mommy, you look like a princess!" one of the boys shouted, his voice pure with pride. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she hugged them. They had only ever seen her in worn clothes and weary smiles. Tonight, they saw her strength shining. Makeup brushed away the shadows of sleepless nights. Soft curls framed her face. A diamond pendant, Alexander's quiet gift, rested on her collarbone, catching the light. She touched it nervously, but he said simply, "Consider it armor." As the limousine rolled toward the Beverly Hills Grand Hotel, Emily's nerves twisted. She imagined Ryan's smirk, Vanessa's laughter, the whispers of the crowd. Her palms dampened with fear. Alexander noticed. "Do you know what makes a storm powerful, Emily?" he asked quietly. She glanced at him, puzzled. "It doesn't ask permission, it just arrives. Tonight, you are that storm." She exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping her lips. For years she had been shrinking, hiding, trying to survive. But tonight, she would not hide. Tonight, she would walk into the ballroom not as Ryan's discarded ex-wife, but as the woman he never truly knew. The limousine slowed before the glowing entrance of the hotel. Photographers clustered outside, their cameras flashing at every arriving guest. The moment the doors opened, the crowd gasped. Emily stepped out, radiant, her children trailing like royal heirs, Alexander at her side exuding quiet power. For the first time in years, the world wasn't laughing at her. It was in awe. And inside, Ryan's perfect stage was about to become his greatest humiliation. The Beverly Hills Grand Hotel glittered like a kingdom of gold that night. Guests swirled across the ballroom in gowns and tuxedos, their laughter echoing under chandeliers heavy with crystals. The string quartet played a delicate tune as champagne flowed like water. To the elite gathered there, the night was a showcase of wealth and power. But within minutes, it would become something far more unforgettable. The golden doors at the entrance opened slowly, almost ceremoniously, and the first sound to break the music was the collective gasp of the crowd. Outside, a sleek black limousine had pulled up, its polished body reflecting the floodlights and camera flashes. Photographers pressed forward, their shouts rising above the music. "Who is it? Who's arriving now?" And then she stepped out. Emily Carter. No longer the weary mother scraping by in silence. No longer the discarded ex-wife Ryan believed she would always be. Tonight, she was a vision. Her sapphire gown shimmered with every step, her hair cascaded in soft curls, and her diamond pendant caught the light like a crown jewel. Her back was straight, her chin lifted, her eyes calm yet fierce. She carried herself with the grace of a queen who had nothing left to fear. The murmurs grew louder. "Is that her? Ryan's ex-wife? She looks incredible. I thought she was struggling." But Emily wasn't alone. Beside her walked Alexander Harrington, the enigmatic billionaire whose presence alone could silence a room. His dark suit was tailored to perfection, his hand resting gently yet protectively on Emily's back. The sight of him escorting her sent shockwaves rippling through the ballroom. Guests leaned in to whisper frantically, "Why is she with him? Alexander never brings anyone to these events. What does this mean?" And then, the final blow. 3 small figures emerged from the limousine. Emily's triplets, dressed in tiny tuxedos and a sparkling dress, their wide eyes reflecting innocence and pride. They clung to their mother's hands, oblivious to the chaos their presence caused. Gasps turned into stunned silence. Whispers hissed across the hall like fire. "They're his children. They look just like Ryan. My God, he abandoned them?" Inside the ballroom, Ryan's confident smirk froze on his lips. His champagne flute trembled slightly in his hand. For weeks, he had boasted about the humiliation Emily would bring upon herself if she dared show up. But as he watched her glide into the room with a billionaire at her side and 3 living reminders of his betrayal trailing behind, the humiliation was his. Vanessa's face hardened, her painted smile cracking at the edges. She gripped Ryan's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "What is she doing here? And with him?" she hissed. The orchestra faltered, missing notes as every musician turned their eyes toward the entrance. The ballroom, moments ago filled with laughter and vanity, had shifted into a stage of suspense. All eyes followed Emily as she stepped onto the polished marble floor, her heels clicking in rhythm with the pounding hearts around her. Emily did not rush. She did not shrink. She moved with steady confidence, her gaze fixed forward, ignoring the whispers, ignoring Ryan's pale face. She wasn't here to be their victim. She was here to reclaim her dignity. And as the doors closed behind her, sealing the silence, one truth became clear to everyone in that glittering hall. The woman they expected to pity had arrived as the one they could only admire. The silence in the ballroom stretched like glass ready to shatter. Emily stood tall in her sapphire gown, Alexander at her side, the triplets clinging to her hands. The whispers grew louder, a storm of curiosity and scandal. Ryan felt every pair of eyes drifting from him and Vanessa to the woman he had hoped to bury in shame. Rage burned through his chest. This was not the scene he had planned. She was supposed to appear small,